Comedy, please welcome to the stage, Genevieve.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to try to use the chair. We'll see how it works out. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna slide it over. Can everybody see me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, oh, this is comfortable. All right. So for my show, we're gonna talk about the show a couple of times throughout my story. And it's a notebook. We've all had a notebook, right? Okay. So let's start with grade school. In grade school, this was introduced to me as a journal. We'll move it. Now, life was a lot simpler back then. And my teacher, she would ask us to put things in there like, what's your favorite color? Or, what do you want to be when you grow up? Or, what was your favorite part of the day? And my teacher, she was so excited and interested in hearing what we all had to say. And I was eager to tell her. In the 5th grade, we had an exercise in which we had to write down what our favorite physical attribute was about our neighbor and tell it to him. And lucky for me, in the 5th grade, I sat beside my crush. And he told me that he liked my high cheekbones. And I was like, how in the world do you know about high cheekbones at 10? But I never forgot that compliment, and it stays with me to this day. Let's go on to middle school. So in my small town, we had 2 grade schools, and when we got to middle school, they combined the 2. And most would call it combining the have with the have-nots. And I just said it was the experienced with the inexperienced, because I was the part of the have-nots. So there's that. But in middle school, this got introduced to me as a composition book. Who remembers these? So in middle school, it was all about getting your assignments done. Nobody really cared about your thoughts or feelings, so they didn't ask us to write much in our journal. But I kept writing anyways. So in the 6th grade, we had an assignment where we had to write down an exotic food that we wanted to try. And I wrote down broccoli. And I spelled it Broccley. Yeah. See, I was in the smart class, so all of my white friends and my well-to-do black friends, they'd always talk about having broccoli for dinner, and I thought it was just so interesting. I wanted to try it. I really did. And that's when I started to realize there was so much that I didn't know about the world, and there was so much that I hadn't been introduced to. That's not for me. I think that's outside. Okay. Well, during that time, there was a lot going on. I was going through puberty. I think we all were, right? I was going through puberty, trying to figure out life. My mom was in an abusive relationship. That abuse extended to her children. I wanted to be with my father. I did. But according to my mother, while he may have been in my life, he didn't always want me. And according to her, you see, I have to tell you guys something. My father was dark-skinned. If you look at me, I'm not the darkest. And when I was born, she said that he told her that I was too light to be his daughter. That was something that stuck with me for a long time. And it kept me from having a relationship with my father for a long time. You see, that phrase or that statement was told to me anytime I was excited and I wanted to call my father and tell him something. Or anytime I was sad and I didn't want to talk to her and I wanted to talk to my dad. So there was that. But I wrote it down in my composition book, and I said, I'm going to talk to my father about this one day. Didn't happen in middle school. Let's go to high school. High school, I tried broccoli. I loved it. But I realized it wasn't rich people food. And it wasn't even that expensive. It wasn't. But now I'm living with my father. And it feels more like we're roommates than we're actually living together. We're kind of like two ships passing in the night, you know. We're butting heads because we're so much alike, but we are trying. We're trying. This now becomes a journal. I start to write down my most intimate thoughts. I feel like my mom has given up on me and my siblings. I start to think about what conversations would be like if my mom were emotionally available to talk to me. So I start to write them down. I wonder what I would say and how I would respond if she found me interesting enough to ask what my favorite part of the day was. Then I also wanted to know some things about her. I wanted to know what her favorite color was. And maybe what does she want to be when she grew up? And did that happen for her? I wondered what it would be like if we ever did mother and daughter things, like maybe go get our nails done, you know. I promised myself in my diary, I said, I wouldn't even talk much, I'd just listen. I'd just be there and soak it all in, you know. I wonder what it would be like to go shopping with my mom. Hell, Sarah, I wonder if we'd ever get to go on a vacation together. That would be fun. Let's move on to college. College, I abandoned this thing. I abandoned my diary. I was so laser focused on graduating in 3 years that this was just a study pad. That's it. I went to a historically black college and university, HBCU. If you can't read this, this says, freedom has never been free. Juneteenth, 1865. I did it. I graduated in 3 years. I was proud of myself. I went on to grad school. I jet set it straight to grad school. I went to London, United Kingdom for it as well. Still laser focused, still on the path of my studies. Now, one day I was on the train, I was on the way to my flat, and if you've ever been to London or never been to London, it's sectioned out in zones. Zone 1, where all the rich people stay. Zone 4, basically poor people or families with kids. And I was a poor student, so I was all the way up there. And I was on the train, I got on the train at London Bridge, I set out to my flat. And I look up, I was reading, I looked up, and there was a stop along the way named Broccoli. And it was spelled Broccley. I had a good laugh because I thought about my composition book from middle school, and I thought to myself, who would have ever thought that one of the have-nots would have made it all the way to London to go to school? Not only that, I see broccoli. That was a beautiful time, but it also made me stop to think that I need to do better. And I promised myself that I would do better. I'd start writing again. I would. So let's go to adulthood. I finally get up the courage to talk to my dad, and I asked him about that phrase I was told so many times. And he said, daughter. Now, he only had 2 girls, he never had any boys, but he still called us daughter. So whenever he talked to me and my sister. But he said, daughter, your mom and I, we weren't committed. And I didn't know. I didn't know if you were mine, so yes, I asked for a paternity test. But as soon as I knew you were mine, you were mine. And I'm sorry you had to go through that. I started writing again. It was beautiful. I thanked my father for his honesty, and I was thankful that I had the courage to ask him about that then, because just 8 years after, he would pass away from pancreatic cancer. So thankfully, we had 8 years to have a good relationship. Now, I started to realize that I may never get that same peace with my mother. That wall is still up. But now I've kind of thought to myself, let's think of it from her perspective. Let me start to write about the mom that I would want to be for my kids. Maybe the pain is just too much for her to talk about. Because after all, when we think about the past, when we repeat the past, we often have to relive it, right? So maybe I don't want to make her relive that past. And that's okay. But now, this thing has turned into something amazing. So I've started to take my whimsical imagination and pair it with my real life. And then I started stand-up comedy. So now this becomes a joke book. Now I started buying notebooks that would give me some sort of motivation. So this one is actually given to me by my best friend, and it says, Goal Getter. I love it. And this one says, the future is yours. I really love writing in this one, because anytime I see it, I think, what if? But I want to tell you guys that this story doesn't yet have an ending, because I'm still writing it. But I do want to encourage you guys, and some of you are like me, you didn't grow up in the digital age, or you grew up right on, when we first started the digital age, and you remember writing in a journal, or a notebook, or a composition book. My fellow comedians, we know these as a joke book. However this was introduced with you, I encourage you tonight to continue writing. Write your own story. Control your own narrative. That's all I have. Thank you guys for listening.
Genevieve, everybody. How was that chair?
It was very comfortable.
Very comfortable.
Very comfortable. And I will say, I hope he's still recording this. Writing has changed my life. It will continue to change my life. And I look forward to doing more of these. Thank you.
Yeah, anytime. Genevieve, everybody. Isn't it sad it took so long for someone to try out the chair? And then both people who tried it have given it full 4 stars, fine, top-notch reviews, all right? Everyone else is so foolish.